One of the things, besides what it does, one of the things about DMT that always fascinated me was the fact that it's such a simple molecule.
DMT stands for dimethyltryptamine, NN-dimethyltryptamine. If you actually look at the ring structure of DMT itself, you only have really 4 positions that you can attach things to. So you can make diethyl or dipropyl. There are some other types of carbon chains you can attach to that end that do give you compounds that have activity, but very different from DMT.
It biosynthetically, it's 2 steps from tryptophan, right? 2 trivial enzymatic steps from tryptophan. Well, tryptophan is an amino acid, of course, and it's everywhere. So all organisms have tryptophan. And all organisms have the 2 key enzymes that lead to the synthesis of DMT. And these enzymes are very ancient enzymes. They're all over the place. They're, again, part of basic metabolism. So theoretically, anything could synthesize DMT.
DMT is astonishingly widely available in plants and animals all around the world, but so far nobody really knows why it's there or what its function is.
That's the $64 billion question, is why is DMT in our bodies? Why is it in plants, in all sorts of mammals? And what is the role it plays in humans?
The conventional wisdom 30, 40 years ago was that these things had no real function. They were just sort of physiological noise, but that's a very naive understanding. And what we now understand is that these secondary compounds are, in a sense, the language of plants. These are messenger molecules. This is what plants use to mediate their relationships with other organisms in the environment.
Why is it that human beings' central nervous system are wired to receive this experience? Must be that, you know, there's important information to be learned.
So I don't think it's universally present in nature by accident. It has a real function. We have co-evolved with these plants. There's a purpose and a meaning to it.
So it really fits in with the notion that DMT may be the common molecular language, resonant language, among all living beings on this planet and maybe others as well. I can't think of a more powerful tool to explore the whole question of what is consciousness.
These substances are tools that can be used to expand awareness in all areas of life and apply that expanded awareness for the betterment of people's lives and their communities, their families, and our society.
DMT, the spirit molecule, you know, it's a conundrum, it's a paradox. What the spirit is the inner world, the molecule is the external world. So the psychedelics or entheogens take us from the science to the spirit.
I was drawn to the pineal gland, which is a very small organ in the center of the brain, which has always been an object of interest and even veneration for a lot of esoteric physiological disciplines. I thought, you know, it wasn't totally crazy to presume a pineal site of origin of DMT, which, you know, fit in nicely with my theory that the pineal was somehow involved in naturally occurring mystical states.
This hypothesis proposes that the pineal gland at certain times, when it's under specific stress or stimulation, it releases a significant amount of this hormone, DMT, and it's that hormone that facilitates the entering and exiting of the soul in the body. This is what the Jewish sage mystics have been describing in a coded language for literally thousands of years.
Through meditation, through fasting, chanting, any number of techniques, there might be a burst of endogenous DMT that was correlated with mystical and near-death experiences. And I had this theory that there is a big similarity between psychedelics and experiences that were possible with a lot of meditation. And that was one of the original findings that led me to start looking for a spirit molecule, for a compound in the brain that elicited mystical experience.
I think there may be a role for DMT in explaining any number of hallucinatory phenomena that man has experienced throughout his history. Creativity, imagination, dream states, changes that occur due to isolation, trauma, starvation, all of which produce hallucinatory phenomena. These hallucinatory phenomena are explainable by the presence of compounds known to produce hallucinations. And the only compounds that we know of that are capable of doing this are the class of compounds known as hallucinogens.
When thinking about spiritual states, I think endogenous hallucinogenic compounds and molecules that the brain can potentially release are probably very relevant to this topic, because on one hand, they may really help us to elucidate what is the neurochemical mechanism of these experiences. I mean, if we can say that there's a release of endotopic, because on one hand, they may really help us to elucidate what is the neurochemical mechanism of these experiences. I mean, if we can say that there's a release of endogenous opiates, or we can say that there's a release of dopamine or something like that, and we can measure that release, and we can see where in the brain those different molecules go, what receptors they activate or deactivate, and hence we can really learn a lot more about what these experiences are, because it really can allow us to match up these experiences that people have with hallucinogens, as well as understanding where they are related in the context of the brain's receptors and the different parts of the brain that may or may not become active.
One of the other interesting things about the pharmacology of DMT is that it's actively transported into the brain. And so you have to wonder about the role of DMT in just everyday normal perceptual, activity. Too much DMT and things become very psychedelic, or, not enough, DMT in the brain can make things dull and flat and gray.
There's something that, for me, makes sense about DMT. You called it the spirit molecule. It might almost be called, the reality molecule. Philosophically, it makes sense that something that would be so fundamental to the way we perceive reality would be imbued out there in reality.
As valuable as my DMT experiences have been, I feel that there's a lot more enduring value, really, in this folk technology, which stretches it out and makes it a navigable space. Our whole Western, European-derived tradition of distilling alcohols and isolating chemicals and making everything stronger and taking it out of nature and putting it into the biggest punch that we can, I don't think that generally that's the most useful way. I think there's a reason that cultures have learned to turn a 5-minute experience into a 5-hour experience. It seems to me that ayahuasca has had a plan, and that it's reached out into the world and brought DMT into many, many thousands of lives in a much bigger canvas than it had reached for the last 10,000 or however many years. And it's done it very rapidly, and it's done it with form to go with it.
It started seeming to me that what was happening with DMT, particularly with respect to some of these reports of entering parallel or alternate or freestanding parallel sorts of realms of existence, is that indeed was what their consciousness was doing. The chemistry of their brain, which is the organ of consciousness, was being changed by DMT in such a way that they could then receive information that we weren't able to receive normally.